What's up, guys? Welcome to Podcast 412, Fight for Purity. A bold way of looking at challenges that young people are facing. We'll talk about the naked truth of life and how to handle the problems you're thinking but not talking about. So strap in, get ready for another great podcast.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to our podcast where we're still talking about love. And we're still talking about, what is it, Storge love. I can't, still for the life of me. Storge love. But before we get started, my love is being challenged. It's being challenged for my son over there. We're going to start off with our fun fact. So, in a female baby's first few months of life, their eye contact will increase by over 400%. So, from the time they're born, first few months, 400%, that's a lot. And boys will show less improvement, which I think is interesting. So, boys don't like looking people in the eye, apparently. And then in a study done on 100 babies on the day since their birth, girls were found to prefer looking at young women's faces while boys preferred moving objects, which is probably why my child over there is causing a ruckus. I'll get him right now. We'll put a pause on this while I settle my child. We'll be right back. And we're back. But yeah, we're going to keep talking about that Storge love. And we're still trying to talk about moms and all that good stuff because we talked about dads already. And so we're just going to keep transitioning into moms and everything. So go ahead.
Yeah. So we kind of wanted to look a little bit because it's kind of a hard subject to talk about. I think we had the same problem talking about dads because people ask, well, what's it like to have a dad? And it was hard to put your finger on exactly, but we were able to get through it. So we're going to try to get through this one now. We're going to talk about moms or mothers. One of the things that we looked at is kind of how the 60s kind of changed those roles a little bit or a lot of it. And we're looking at just different things that kind of impacted mothers. So I believe, I think before the Industrial Revolution, which I believe was before the 1950s, a lot of families were like farmers. So, so the one thing that I noticed, like reading through all these different things, was that families, well, obviously I think one of the things that we learned was that women had it wasn't uncommon for women to have 10 kids. Yeah. So, so it wasn't uncommon, that
was the average.
Yeah, because there was obviously no way to stop that from happening. We didn't have, birth control. We didn't have all these, contraceptives. So it was, big families, and obviously we didn't have all the technology and all the different things that we have now. So a lot of families had farms. And so the thing with farms is that everybody was involved in farming. The parents, well, obviously mom, dad, and the kids. The kids had a lot of responsibilities. I believe, I don't know too much about farming other than it's a lot of work and it requires a consistent, and kids didn't go to school really back in those days, so there wasn't
I know the farm day starts, I think, before the sun comes up, from what I understand.
Yeah, because you have to go, depending, I guess, on
what you have on your farm.
If you had animals, or if it was just if you were just tilling the land, but I imagine they had probably chickens and, for the eggs and the milk, the cows, all the bare, at least, necessities. So that was family life back then. And I was reading that just, getting water, I'm sure, was just a task in itself, because you didn't really, not everybody had running water. So I imagine you had to go walk somewhere and go get water. And then, we're used to just going and...
you have to go to the well.
Yeah.
Pump
pump it. Carry it back to your house. And then even then, I don't know if it was drinkable or not.
Or if you had to filter it out.
Or if you had to boil it or, and I don't know. I didn't look into all that stuff, but I imagine, I don't know how often they took a shower. I don't know how much water you had to get like every day, if it was just for cooking or if it was for cleaning or if it was like, so you can imagine just the task of just getting water was probably a thing in itself. And then if you had to wash clothes, that was probably, I'm sure by hand, or maybe you went down to the river. Maybe, I don't know if you went down to the river and washed clothes. So, I mean, I think it's changed quite a bit because we don't have to do any, none of us have to, that I know of, have to go draw water from anywhere.
I mean, there's a well by my house, but we don't use it for drinking, So.
Yeah. So it's just those things, just the simple things, They didn't have school, so the kids didn't have school, so you didn't have to go to school, which some kids probably now would be, oh yeah, but they had to work. So there was a lot of labor involved. Like and the one thing that I kind of was thinking about, it was like a family thing, that everybody had to do their part. Otherwise, you weren't gonna like eat. You weren't gonna survive if you didn't do your part. So. And so I was reading a few things. I think I don't know as far as like the times, but I think if you were 8, you could actually be the driver of the horse and carriage. So if you were an 8-year-old, you could do that. And then I think with the Industrial Revolution, I was reading one story where the kids would pump water. I guess I don't know where they were, but they were somehow underneath the mines, like in the lower level. They'd have to pump water, but they stood in water, I guess, like up to their knees, and so you had to pump the water really fast. Otherwise, it would rise up, and you couldn't do your job. Yeah, and you're talking about like hours. I think I heard that women worked like I think they said like 80 hours sometimes. They could work up to 80 hours. So, and even during the Industrial Revolution, same thing. It was mom, it was dad, and it was the kids. And the kids obviously were cheap labor back then, and that whole child, whatever.
That's why we have child labor laws now.
Yeah, because you use the kids, So, I mean, a lot has changed since then, So in the 60s, they introduced the pill or birth control, I guess. So, and then that kind of changed the whole dynamics. And then one of the things I was reading was that, I mean, I guess what you were doing when you were a mother back before all that was you were teaching your children basically how to transition from being a child to an adult.
To be able to, I think, like sustain yourself.
Yeah, because that's what you were doing, because you had to teach them, so it wasn't just about, I think, like I said, in the 50s is when the teenage term came into.
When they started going to school and stuff, right?
Yeah, when they started coming to play. So I mean, being a mother now is a lot different now. Yeah. Like, can you guys think of things that maybe are different now than back then? That way I'm not talking this whole time. Just kidding.
History.
Well, one thing that keeps popping into my mind, I feel like even back then, because there was so much work that had to be done, like the kids, discipline was instilled in them, I guess, in a sense.
I think just like in an everyday way, though.
Yeah. So nowadays,
I think today you have to like force structure and discipline because our days aren't structured like that at all anymore. Because I feel like before, your day had to be planned out all day in order for dinner to be ready, for your clothes to be washed, like because everything was so hands-on. So I think, like you said, discipline, not just like, I don't mean like,
not the beating,
not the beating kind, but like you need to do this, it has to be done by this time, or dinner's not going to be done, or you're not going to have clothes tomorrow because they won't be dry because you did it too late, kind of thing.
Yeah, because we didn't have dryers. It's not like you could throw your clothes.
You had to like literally put them. I don't know if they had like the lines,
clotheslines,
but like they had to
one by one.
I don't know.
if that.
Yeah.
And I don't think they probably had a whole lot of clothes either, like we do. No. Like we do now. And it's like you said, I think you were learning something. Every day was a learning to do something. Yeah. Physically, I think like you were physically like tired by the end of the day, even if you were just a child. You know, you were physically, so there was probably, I don't know.
Like there was like less downtime,
Yeah.
so less time for kids to get like super antsy like they are now.
Yeah.
You know, because there's too much time.
Yeah.
Like even for adults, sometimes we have too much time on our hands because we don't have to do everything
Yeah.
by hand anymore.
Yeah, and technology just keeps advancing, you
Yeah.
know. And then I think too, the presence of social media affects how parents or mothers, you know, because you already, well, I don't know if everyone does, but I'm already like, I don't know what I'm doing half the time, you know, as a parent, because I didn't have good role models as parents, you know. But then you have social media on top of that telling you what you should do, or maybe you're doing this wrong, you know. So it's like a constant. I think social media has a big part in,
Or you have this diagnosis, this is why you are the way that you are, like even as like a woman, or like with like being a mother in a sense. And it's like, what do we listen to?
And it's funny, it's like what was normal back then is like not normal now. You
It's
know?
like looked down upon now.
Yeah. So like, I mean, it's tough. I think to be like, it's still tough to be a mom. You know, but I mean, back then they did it. I mean, I read all kinds of stuff right now. Like I said, I was reading that even like the women when they worked during the industrial time, that they would have to push these coal carts, and a lot of them would have miscarriages because of working so hard. You know, or they'd have their babies, and then they'd have to go back to work because it was necessary. It wasn't like, you know, you were out working because
Trying to make the money.
yeah, trying to make money. It was just like
In order to survive.
in order to survive, you had to work, you know, and they didn't pay you a lot of money back in those days, you know. So I feel like, but now we deal with kids with, they have so many issues now. Yeah. And I think like back then, because some people say, well, you know, it's better back then, or it's better. I think it was better back then as far as you had responsibilities as even like a young child.
I feel like it was easier to transition from a child to an adult because you had to do it so early.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was necessarily like better all the way around.
Yeah.
But I think it was just simpler. Like there weren't as many, I guess, behavioral problems with kids because there wasn't time or the energy.
But even in like the roles for like a mom and dad, like the dads taught the boys how to be men, and then the women had their role in teaching the little girls.
housewife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they had to
Because that was just how.
they had to participate either
Yeah.
way.
But I think the biggest thing, like I said, it was you understood as a parent that your job was to help them make that transition to be adults. I feel like somewhere along from then to now,
I feel like the goal I think sometimes now isn't necessarily to be an adult. I feel like sometimes more the goal is to be like a successful adult in today, which is different than being an adult. Like, because when you're teaching your kid to be successful, you're talking about like business and like how to make money or how to do this or how to do that, versus when you're being adult, you're teaching them more like morals and ethics, like you know, help people do this, do that, do things that are gonna last, do things, you know, or whatever. I feel like it's just different mindsets.
and then you think about like we probably spend more money on our kids now. Like a big part of like America is really focused on kids, like buying this for your kid, buying that. I mean, look at how many toys our kids have. I was telling I was telling somebody that when we moved here, I said I had a truckload of toys. You know, not like a bunch of furniture. I had like all these toys that I brought with me, because it's almost like you have to entertain, like constantly keep your children entertained and whatever you call it.
Yeah, well, now too, like work ethic wise, they don't know how to work for anything. So I think a lot of the generation now too thinks like they're owed something because there's no, you know, like
Because they're not taught responsibility.
yeah. So like they don't know like, oh, I need to work for that, or you know, you can't just have everything given to you, because in the real world it's not like that. Like your bosses just don't give everything to you. Like you have to earn stuff, you know. and there's like sacrifice sometimes. And I think sometimes as parents, because I think when you don't grow up with stuff, you want to give your kids everything, but then you don't realize you're like kind of doing them a disservice.
Yeah.
Because
Crippling them.
because
Yeah.
then they don't make that transition. As I think that's what was better back then, is that they knew how to make the transition, as opposed to now, like,
Well, I think what it is too is you spent all your time with your parents when you weren't at school, and when like all of your time was with your family. And if you're on a farm, you know, that's a bunch of land. You couldn't just, you know, go to your neighbor's house, you know, go to the store real quick, you know. So like all of your time was spent with your family. And so now that's not really the case. So I think that's kind of like going back to like being like a parent, like a mom, like you have to spend time with your family, I think, to be a, I don't know if a good mom, a better mom, a
I
successful
feel like
mom.
there's more like a conscious effort
Yeah.
that you have to make in order to have that time to spend with them.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you were just automatically there.
You couldn't go nowhere, so you had to
go
be with your
nowhere.
family.
And I think that made a difference because also when you're teaching responsibility, it's also nice to see that your mom is responsible.
Yeah.
And that your dad is that yes, you're working, but mom isn't just kicking back, you know. They're working as well alongside you. With you. They're like they did it first and now they're showing you how to do it. And then you just that helps to see your parents do that.
And I think a lot of like when parents notice that their kids aren't responsible, they try to teach it to them. And then but their kids are like, what about you?
Or even what for?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Yeah, that's what you're here for. You know? It's that whole idea, like you said, we want to make it, because like you said, I think every parent thinks that. We want it easier, but it's like, easier isn't better. You know, it's not helpful, you know. I mean, like one of my things was, I always wanted my kids to be grateful. You know, but one thing that I noticed is if you give them everything, they're not grateful because they don't appreciate, because you're just handing them, you're just giving this and you're giving that, and so
well, they don't see the value of it.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand the concept of, oh, this costs this much. Like, you know, I seen this video of this mom took her daughters to the grocery store and she had them like do the shopping, and she's like, I can't even buy like this small pack of 3 like chicken breasts. Like, can't buy this package. She's like, I'd have to work like my 1 hour of working would get me nothing, you know. So they don't value anything, and I think that's what's lost is, you know,
Because we're trying to make it easier, we're losing that connection, I guess.
because when you do stuff with your kids too, you do have a greater bond with them as well. You know, even if you sit there and play a board game with them, you know, like when you're talking and hanging out, or like the family dinners where you sit down and talk and you're not on the phones. And I think too, what I've seen is people in their mind of being a good mom is, well, social media again. You post something, but that may not be like your real life. You see like these happy families. Oh, I took my kids to, you know, whatever baseball game. I took them to the lake, whatever, but you're on your phone the whole time. But you have all these great pictures that are empty. You know, so even social media presence of what a mother is, I think.
And they didn't have any of those things back then. Like nothing. Like no TVs. I don't remember when the TV came into play, but no TVs, no computers, no phones, no, like nothing. So you literally had to use your imagination, you know, even when you did have like downtime, you know. So, and I feel like it's hard in our society now to do that.
A better mom, I guess.
I say, like, one thing for me is that I feel like a parent has to be present. You have to be there, like not just
physically,
not
though.
just in your body, like physically, but mentally, like communicating, talking to your kids, you know, having one-on-one, you know, reading to them, talking to them. And I feel like it's very easy to not do that. It's very easy to just, like you said, hand you a tablet, you know, sit you in front of the TV, and you know, and you lose that. You lose that connection with your kids.
Well, I mean, even just this. Like, I know I could put like a colorful something on the screen, and he would sit there and just stare at it. Like, I know he would, but I'm like, it's not what I want to do. You know, it's more inconvenient, you know, to have to hold my child, you know, but he's happier. And then even though it's inconvenient, I like holding him.
And even just that simple thing of holding your baby, like back then they didn't have high chairs, they didn't have strollers. I think they had the little buggies, I think that's what they called them. But you know, those still were for the wealthy. But even just holding, you probably had to hold your baby quite a bit.
The wraps.
Yeah,
The
because in
wraps.
other countries they wrap
Yeah.
them and hold them all the
Yeah,
time.
you didn't have air conditioning, you didn't have heating, you know. Well, you maybe had a fireplace, but just the simple things. I think that you actually probably did a lot more bonding with your kids. Yeah, because you were forced to, you had to, you know, you didn't have all the luxuries, you know, that we think our kids need.
And it probably wasn't an inconvenience either, you know, like, or seen as an inconvenience to have to spend time with your family. Your kids.
I love my family. What? And maybe that's the big thing, is that we feel like love is an inconvenience almost, because sometimes love is inconvenient. Loving your family, it takes up your time, you know. But it's not a bad thing, because then later on you have people who support you. Like even like if you have a strong relationship with your family, like me and my sisters, we're close now because we were close when we were kids, and we're adults now.
And just that what you just said was the inconvenience, because I think that's what changed in the 60s, was being a mother became an inconvenience, you know. And I'm sure it was hard because, you know, you had so many children, you know, and so it probably was a challenge, but you lost something, you know, from that generation to where we're at now, you know. So, but we're gonna continue the conversation about mothers and just, you know, keep that.
Being a mom is not an inconvenience.
Yeah.
You know, and love isn't an inconvenience.
There are inconveniences
In love.
yeah, but yeah,
Showing that familial love, I guess,
yeah.
isn't an inconvenience.
yeah. So, but thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. Join us for our next podcast. You can contact us through Instagram at podcast412 or email us at 412fight@gmail.com. See you next time.